Every time you try to change the status quo, every time you push the boundaries of what is feasible in the world, every time, in other words, you do your job as a designer, as an innovator, as a design thinker, you will face roadblocks. You will meet closed doors. You will find complexity in front of you. The first message I wanna give you is don't be frustrated by this. Don't fear these difficulties. They're part of the game. If you don't find them, there is a high probability that probably you're not changing anything. You're not driving any change because change implies this complexity on your way. So first of all, once again, don't get frustrated. It's part of the game. Now, looking back at my professional journey, I identified 5 phases that every effort to change the status quo, to innovate, go through. And I find these 5 phases very useful. They've been very useful for me. The decodification of these 5 phases has been very useful for me because somehow they help me navigating that kind of complexity, and they help me developing once again a playbook to navigate that complexity. So when I try to change something, it could be in a project, or it could be all the way to changing the culture of organization or trying to change society, I know that I will find often at the beginning people in denial. People that will be like, we don't need that change. Why do we need to change? We are doing so well with our assets, with our core capabilities, with the way we do things, we normally do things. We don't need that kind of change. That's the situation where probably companies like Kodak or Blockbuster found themselves at the beginning, and that phase is very dangerous if it doesn't change. If from the beginning you carry the kind of denial attitude all the way to a situation in which the world is really changing around you, but you're not changing. And then it becomes really dangerous because when you really realize that it is the time to change, it may be too late. But luckily for many companies, many brands, many people, many organizations and communities, often you do have somebody that understands that it's time to change. This somebody needs to be a CEO, it needs to be somebody at the top of the company, an executive. It needs to be somebody that has enough power and resources to drive that change, to sponsor that change. Many years ago in my previous company, somebody played a role and understood that they needed to hire a designer from outside of the company to try to drive this design-driven change inside the organization. And so here arrived young Mauro. I was around 27 when I started in that company, with my suitcase flying from Italy to Minnesota to try to convince the big organization that they needed to embrace design and this cultural change driven by design. And it was not easy on paper, but then here I go. I meet all these executives, all these leaders in R&D, marketing, different parts of the company, and the meetings go very well, and they're really excited. I'm like, yes, I'm getting a lot of traction. I was really happy of how the company, the people in the company were understanding what I was trying to pitch and propose. I remember in one of the first trips I go meet my executive sponsor. His name is Monosari. He was the EVP, the executive vice president of the consumer business. And he was this very serious man, very powerful inside the company. And I remember I go to him and, one of these first trips, and I tell him, Mo, things are going very well. and the business leaders are understanding what I'm proposing, getting a lot of traction. Is great. Design is understood. Mo looks at me, very serious in my eyes, and he tells me, they are lying to you. Like, Mo, how is it possible? No, Mo. I have a very high EQ, a lot of empathy. I get people. I understand them. You were not in the meeting. I tell you, Mo, that they were really excited that what I'm proposing is something that they really understand and they are valuing. He looks at me again, and still very serious, he say, I tell you that they are lying to you. And then he goes on and he explains with a metaphor what he was talking about. And he tells me, Mauro, imagine you go to a gallery, an art gallery, and you see a beautiful piece of art in front of you. And in your pocket you have a lot of money. You have the money to buy the piece of art. What do? You are there in a gallery, you love the piece of art, you buy the piece of art. Well, Mauro, you were a piece of art in the art gallery of the company, and you are one of many. And they decided to buy other pieces of art. They didn't buy you. What Mo was talking about was the fact that they didn't commit to what I was proposing. They didn't sponsor it. They didn't propose to invest in it. There was a very important moment in my life, an aha moment that literally changed my way of looking at any connection with people when I was trying to pitch an idea. After that moment, I decided that every time I was proposing something, I would immediately ask the people to commit. They need a sacrifice. They need to invest in you, in your project, in your idea. It could be a financial investment. You may ask people the budget to run the project, resources, people, or it could be anyway some form of sacrifice, some form of engagement. I call it sacrifice on purpose, but it's an engagement, it's a commitment, so that they are with you in that project. If you do so, you will find out that a lot of people that were really nice to you, they will step back and will be like, oh yeah, but I have other priorities, I can't right now. And that's fine. The most of the people will do that. The vast majority of the people will do that. And it's very important for you to identify the ones that really believe in your ideas and the ones that don't. Often in a meeting, people will be nice to you, maybe because they have a passive-aggressive kind of behavior, maybe because very few people enjoy conflict. Often they are nice people that don't want to disappoint you. And then there is also us. We don't like to think that we're not liked. We like to think that people love us. So there is this attitude that eventually we're blind to rejection. So this second phase, after denial, this second phase, when you go, you think you're getting traction and you don't, is what I call the hidden rejection. And it's a very dangerous one, because you think you're getting traction and you're not at all. And you may lose weeks, months, years, depending on what is your project. Weeks, months, years that could be really precious. And if you lose them, they could put you in a very dangerous situation in what you're trying to do, because by the moment you realize, it may be too late for your ideas and your projects to succeed, or for your position inside any kind of organization, any kind of project. So it's important to understand right away who are the people that are doing in the rejection. Now, when you find the ones that are with you, great. When you identify the ones that are not with you, you are already giving yourself and them another opportunity. The opportunity of answering their questions, or asking them why you don't really support me, why you don't want to invest in this. And eventually, you're giving yourself, your project, your ideas, a second chance to actually take these people with you, convince them, changing eventually perspective and helping them understanding the value of what you're proposing. Some of them will be converted, and they will and they will invest in your ideas. Many others won't, and it's good. Even that is good, because you will know who is not with you, and you're not going to invest time, precious time, in that, especially at the beginning when you don't have many resources. At that point, you move to the third phase. The third phase is what I call the occasional leap of faith. Is when you find those few people, I call them the co-conspirators, and with them you start to build proof points for your idea. Now, it's not easy, especially because if you try to innovate, many of those projects will eventually they will fail, they won't arrive to market. So in this phase, it's important to bet on multiple projects first, and second, try with some low-hanging fruits, just to show the value, just to build those proof points I was talking about. Once you find these projects with these people, you start to build your proof points in this occasional leap of faith phase. Then there will be other people that eventually didn't invest in you at the beginning. They will be like, oh, this is interesting actually. This could be real. They will knock your door and they will be like, why don't we do a project, two together? And you will be like, yes, fantastic. Give me the money, or invest in the idea in some formal way. The first two major projects that changed the game for design in PepsiCo, for instance, have been the redesign of Pepsi, what we call Big Ball Blue, and the design of Spire, the fountain, the smart fountain that was not just a successful project by itself, but that helped us in the food service channel with multiple customers in a variety of different ways beyond the product itself. Once you start to work with other co-conspirators, you start to build more proof points. At a certain point, you arrive to a critical mass of proof points. You start to have more credibility. The company is like, oh, actually, in this thing called design, or whatever is the new culture that you're trying to pitch, I see value. I see that actually there is meaningful value for the organization. And this is where you move from the occasional leap of faith to the fourth phase. That is what I call the quest for confidence. This is the phase where you need to translate those proof points in something that is more stable, is more systematic, in value that you generate across the board. And you need to translate your approach in something that is more integrated, that is more part of the way of working, of the DNA of the organization. And this is a very difficult phase because you may have, few successes, but this is the phase then where you need to scale up those successes and you need to integrate that kind of approach into the approach of the company. I call it the quest for confidence because this is where usually the companies lose confidence, because it's that phase where you start to overlap with existing processes and existing teams, and even if you theoretically see the value, then in the day-to-day, that's when you are afraid of taking risk, or there is the not invented here syndrome that get into action, or there are a variety of different difficulties and obstacles that you face in building new processes and insert those processes into the existing ones. This is where you need people in-house, you need the right experts that bring the existing capabilities with them, hand in hand, sharing accountability, responsibility to drive the new culture. Once you do that, when you scale up, you integrate the new approach into the way of working of the company, that's when you reach the fifth phase. That is what I call the holistic awareness, when the new approach is totally integrated in the way of thinking of the organization. So every time you face a project, you are working with a team, with a business, with a partner, keep in mind these 5 phases. Don't get frustrated by the difficulties. Find your co-conspirator. Identify those projects where you can show the value of your new approach. Those projects are often eventually experiments. They're often smaller scale initiatives where you can really show the company the value of your different way of thinking. And then once you start to have a few proof points, start to scale it up inside the organization. Do it with passion, optimism, resilience, curiosity, respect. Bring people with you in a cross-functional way and drive change inside the organization.